There are former Fortnite employees who either disappeared, got exposed, quit suddenly, or completely turned against Epic Games, and we're going to talk about all of them, beginning with Hayden Cohen, the Fortnite leaker who secretly worked for Epic before allegedly destroying his own career after one of the most biggest betrayals in Fortnite history. Hayden, also known online as AdriaFNInfo, had one of the most bizarre downfalls in Fortnite history after going from being one of the community's most trusted leakers to getting publicly sued by Epic Games themselves. Unlike most Fortnite leakers who simply data mine public game files, Hayden's leaks were unusually accurate and often revealed collaborations week before they were announced, with many fans seeing him as one of the most reliable insiders in the entire community. However, in March 2026, everything would completely fall apart after Epic Games filed a lawsuit against Hayden, accusing him of secretly leaking confidential information while working for the company as a contractor. According to the lawsuit, Hayden had allegedly signed a non-disclosure agreement with Epic Games back in September 2025 before later using his internal access to leak upcoming collaborations, involving franchises like South Park, Soul Leveling, Minecraft, Game of Thrones, Overwatch, Kingdom of Hearts. Epic claimed that Hayden had access to confidential development materials through his role as an associate producer, and accused him of posting dozens of leaks across X and Discord while still actively working for the company. Epic Games released a public statement on Twitter announcing the legal actions against him, stating, "Today we took legal action against the former contractor who repeatedly leaked confidential partner IP and trade secrets that they received while working with Epic." The company also explained that the leaks had damaged relationships with major brands and made it harder to secure future collaborations for Fortnite by leaking the exact release dates, cosmetics, character details, and development updates regarding multiple of unannounced partnerships. While Hayden might have thought the Fortnite community would have rallied behind him after the lawsuit became public, the complete opposite happened, and many players instead turned against him immediately. One Reddit user wrote, "It's one thing to be a leaker and finding clues in the files. It's quite different when you actively steal info from inside the company paying you to do a job." Another user would write, "Bro was living the good life working for Epic Games but decided to throw it all away by posting Fortnite leaks." Things became even worse for Hayden after more details about his background became circulating online, with users discovering that he had previously worked for companies like NBC, AMC, Peacock, and American Express before allegedly risking everything for internet clout. Meanwhile, others began defending Epic Games, with one self-proclaimed Epic employee commenting, "Epic Games is the best job I've ever had. They treat employees better than any company I've worked for. Can't believe he threw it all away for nothing." According to the lawsuit, Epic had sent Hayden a cease and desist letter before escalating things further, claiming that he failed to fully comply after being asked to stop leaking information and return company materials. Shortly after the lawsuit became public, Hayden's AdriaFNInfo account disappeared entirely, with his X profile being disabled and his online presence completely vanishing overnight. And unlike many other Fortnite leakers who eventually bounced back after controversy, Hayden's disappearance from the internet only made the entire situation look even worse. However, Hayden Cohen wasn't the only person whose departure completely changed how fans viewed how Fortnite worked behind the scenes. Because while Hayden's story ended with a lawsuit and public humiliation, Donald Mustard's exit was the exact opposite. Donald Mustard had one of the most respected exits in Fortnite history after spending years becoming the creative face behind almost everything players loved about the game. Mustard first joined Epic Games after the company acquired his studio chair entertainment back in 2008, but it wasn't until Fortnite exploded in popularity that he became one of the most recognizable figures at the company. As Fortnite creative director, Donald was responsible for many of the game's biggest live events, storyline, map changes, and collaboration, eventually earning the nickname the Fortnite Lore Master from the community. Throughout Fortnite's peak years, Donald became heavily associated with the game's golden era, helping create iconic moments like the Black Hole event, the 0 Point storyline, the Marvel crossover seasons, and massive in-game concerts watched by millions of players. He was also one of the main reasons Fortnite became known for evolving in real time, with the island constantly changing as a part of the ongoing story. However, despite becoming one of the most beloved figures in Fortnite history, Donald would suddenly announce his retirement from Epic Games in September of 2023, shocking the entire community almost immediately. Donald took to Twitter and wrote, "After an incredible adventure, I'll be retiring from my role as Chief Creative Officer at Epic this month." He would go on to thank Epic Games and reflect on Fortnite's biggest moments. While Donald clearly left on good terms with Epic, many Fortnite fans immediately began worrying about the future of the game, with countless players claiming that Fortnite had already started losing its identity even before his retirement became official. Things became even more interesting after Donald later revealed in an interview that Fortnite event team had slowly been shifted away from the large live events in order to work on other projects inside Epic Games. According to Stefan's interview, Donald admitted basically the event team was starting to be needed to work on other stuff, and it was devastating to me. This immediately fueled theories online that Epic Games has started prioritizing Fortnite metaverse ambition over the cinematic storytelling that originally made the game feel special. Many fans began pointing towards the lack of major story events after Donald's departure. As proof, the Fortnite had fundamentally changed behind the scenes. Unlike Hayden Cohen, Donald Master's reputation only seemed to improve after leaving the game, with many players now looking back at his era of Fortnite with nostalgia. Since retiring from Epic, Donald has joined AGBO, the entertainment company owned by Avengers directors Joe and Anthony, where he's currently working on new storytelling and multiple media projects. While Donald Master left Epic Games with the respect of almost the entire Fortnite community, not every former Epic developer walked away feeling the same way. Bleszinski was one of the biggest names at Epic Games long before Fortnite ever existed, helping turn the company into one of the most respected studios in gaming history. Cliff first joined Epic back in the 90s and quickly became one of the company's most important developers, working on the franchise like Unreal Tournament before eventually becoming the lead designer behind Gears of War, which go on to become one of the Xbox best exclusives. During the late 2000s, Cliff was essential to the public face of Epic Games, constantly appearing in interviews, presentations, and gaming events, while helped build the company's reputation as one of the most innovative studios in the industry. However, despite his success, Cliff would suddenly announce his departure from Epic Games in October the 12th after working at the company for over 2 decades. At the time, many fans were shocked by the announcement, essentially considering Cliff had become so closely associated with Epic's identity. In a statement posted on Epic's website, Cliff explained, "I've been doing this since I was a teenager. Literally half my life video games are my passion, but now it's time for a much needed break." Initially, Cliff framed the departure as a simple burner after years of non-stop game development. However, over time he would become more vocal about how much the game industry itself had changed. In multiple of interviews after leaving Epic, Cliff criticized the increased corporate nature of modern gaming and admitted that he had become disillusioned with where the industry was heading. In a 2015 interview, he stated, "I could pitch the most amazing idea to anybody back when I was at Epic towards the end, and they'll be like, I don't buy it." Things became even more interesting after Fortnite exploded in popularity, because many fans began looking back at Cliff's departure as the moment Epic Games slowly started transforming from a traditional game studio into something completely different. While Cliff never directly attacked Fortnite itself, he did occasionally make comments online criticizing aspects of live service gaming, leading to many other fans to feel like he represented the old Epic Games before Fortnite took over the company completely. Like Donald Masters, who quietly retired after Fortnite's peak years, Cliff attempted to build a brand new studio after leaving Epic called Bleszinski Production. At first, many fans believed the studio would become the next big thing purely because Cliff's reputation was so strong. The company's first major game, Lawbreaker, launched in 2017 and was heavily marketed as a fast-paced competitive shooter designed to compete with games like Overwatch. However, despite all of the hype surrounding Cliff's return, the game failed almost immediately, struggling to maintain players only a week after launch. Cliff would later admit that the game's failure hit him extremely hard, especially after spending years being viewed as one of the gaming's most respected developers. Things became even worse after Bleszinski's second product, Radical Heist, also failed shortly after its release, eventually forcing the studio to shut down completely in 2018. Cliff would later post a long message on Twitter announcing the closure of Bleszinski Production. While many former Epic employees quietly disappeared after leaving the company, Cliff's downfall became incredibly public due to how famous he already was within the gaming industry. And while Cliff's basal career after Epic Games never reached the same heights again, his stories also showed just how much Epic itself had changed over the years, because by the time Fortnite became a global phenomenon, many of the developers who helped build the original identity of Epic Games were already long gone. So while Cliff Basil quietly left Epic Games years before Fortnite became a global phenomenon, thousands of other Epic employees wouldn't get the same chance to leave on their own terms after the company was suddenly hit by the biggest mass layoff in gaming history. Because despite Fortnite making billions of dollars and becoming one of the most recognizable games on the planet, Epic Games would eventually find itself in serious financial trouble behind the scenes. In September of 2023, when Epic Games announced that it was laying around 830 employees, which accounted for roughly 16% of the company's workforce. In a public memo posted directly to Epic website, CEO Tim Swinson admitted that the company had simply been spending far more money than it was making, stating, "For a while now we've been spending way more money than we earn." According to Sween, Epic has been trying to avoid layoffs for months while continuing to spread aggressively on Fortnite's Unreal Engine, the Epic Game Store, and the company's massive metaverse ambitions. However, he eventually admitted that the company's growth strategy had become unsustainable. Epic also revealed that it will be selling Bandcap and spinning off Super Awesome as part of the broader cost-cutting efforts. At the time, many fans were shocked that the company behind Fortnite was struggling financially at all. Fortnite was still one of the biggest games in the world, Unreal Engine was dominating the gaming industry, and Epic had spent years positioning itself as one of the few companies capable of competing with giants like Steam, Apple, and Google. Yet, despite all of this, hundreds of employees suddenly disappeared from the company almost overnight. Things would become even worse in March of 2026 after Epic announced another mass rounds of layoffs, this time cutting off over around 1,000 employees. In another memo sent to the staff, Timmy Sween directly blamed the client engagement for this situation, writing, "The downturns in Fortnite engagement that started in 2025 means we're spending significantly more than we're making." Sween also admitted that Epic had struggled to maintain what he called consistent Fortnite magic with every season, which immediately caused panic throughout the Fortnite community. The layoff quickly sparked backlash online, especially after the fans noticed that Epic was still spending heavily on celebrity collaboration, Unreal Engine expansion, and metaverse projects, while simultaneously firing huge portions of its workforce. One article from the Pace magazine argued that Epic has spent years chasing the metaverse ambition after Fortnite's success, eventually writing, "Fortnite chased the metaverse and now workers are paying the price." In the meantime, many former employees took to social media posting emotional goodbyes messages after suddenly losing their jobs that they had held for years. However, despite Sween's attempt to reassure the fans, the damage had already been done. Many players now viewed the layoffs as proof that Epic Games was no longer the unstoppable company it once appeared to be, especially after the company also began shutting down and scaling back multiple Fortnite side projects shortly afterwards.